Welcome Porto to Ibrox in Group G, and if Standard Liège lose at home to Eintracht Frankfurt, then Arsenal's progress will be assured despite yesterday's 1-1 draw away to Victoria Guimarães. Looking to golf, and Shane Lowry is hoping his push to win the race to Dubai will begin in Antalya today. The Open champion trails current leader Byrne by fewer than 700 points ahead of this week's Turkish Airlines Open. Lowry plays alongside the Austrian and Justin Rose, that's in the last group out today. Padraig Harrington is also in the field, playing alongside Victor Perez and another Austrian in Matthias Schwab. And finally for now, there's a 7-race card in Thurles this afternoon. The first there goes to post at 10-1. For OTB Sports Radio, I'm Anne-Marie Donnan.
OTB Sports Radio.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're very welcome to Off the Ball's Virgin Media Sport Roadshow here at the venue at the Hotel Imperial in Dundalk. On stage tonight, 3 men who've represented their country: Niall Quinn, Damien Delaney and Keith Andrews. But first, would you please welcome on stage, he won't mention the cup defeat, but he is bringing some silverware back to the town. It's IMRO Sports Broadcaster of the Year 2019, Mr. Nathan Murphy.
Good evening, Dundalk. Good evening. Good evening. How are we all? How are we all doing? It is an absolute pleasure to be here at the home of the double winners. Told you to rewrite the script. Yeah. Are we all okay? The double counts, though. The League Cup is big, right? Right? It is brilliant to be here. Dundalk obviously very much setting the pace when it comes to football in this country in recent times. League of Ireland champions. Yeah! Can you go back to that moment when Michael Duffy scored the goal? How good was that? Yeah, you enjoyed that? Listen, it's obviously not what we thought it was going to be tonight. We thought there'd be a parade through the town, in the rain, the celebrations, but there is still a lot to celebrate about football in this part of the world, and we are going to do that over the next little while. There's always a lot to celebrate in this part of the world. Did you know that Dundalk is the home of the 2011 Bachelor of the Year? That's right, folks. 2013, he tells me. He's sitting right there. Do you all know JP Gilbert? He's from, I'm told, Rathpart, which is the posh part of town, I hear. The RD Road. Is that the posh part of town? Not quite sure. He insisted, though, that we come up to Dundalk tonight so he is responsible for bringing us here. The hometown hero himself. Well done, JP. We do have a brilliant lineup coming away. We have 3 former Republic of Ireland internationals who are going to get on stage in just a moment. But we are here with thanks to Virgin Media Sport. Their rivals might want to charge you for every kick of the ball, but with Virgin Media, you now have access to a world-class array of sports as standard. A lot to get through over the next little while. We are going to be talking about the Champions League. We're going to chat about the Republic of Ireland senior team and what's going on with them. But let's get our guests out on stage. Please give it up for Damien Delaney, Keith Andrews and Niall Quinn. Wow. How are you? You're popular in Dundalk, aren't you? Who knew? Should we just get it out of the way then and chat about the game yesterday?
Why not? Great game. And I would go as far as to say the best game I've seen in the Aviva probably since the glory days when Keith and them were qualifying for European Championships. There wasn't too many of them. But I just thought yesterday was a great tonic for Irish football, domestic elite football in this country. Both teams did football a real favour. And the optimism in the air coming from the ground, from people like me and people who I brought to the game who haven't gone to a lot of League of Ireland, saying, this is so brilliant, this was fantastic. And
in terms of what? The standard of football?
The standard of football. Both teams, I thought, were admirable in their approach. Obviously, Dundalk are a strong team, but they're really well sort of marshalled in terms of what they do. They probably had a better chance of scoring through set pieces, I know. They didn't really fire. Hoban didn't get chances like he normally does. But what I liked about them was they just have a resilience that is vital in all good football teams. And it was no surprise, I think, to me and to the few thousand Shamrock Rovers fans that we were near behind that goal when the goal went in to tie the game up. It was almost like, you know, Man United used to do, or Liverpool done recently, and you felt, oh, it's Dundalk's now to win. But the football was great, and Rovers were plucky. You know, they started brilliantly. They gave it everything. And I'm trying to give some sympathy here to the people of Dundalk. I think you should be very proud of your team. What they didn't win yesterday, but I think they gave Irish football a big boost along with Shamrock Rovers. It was a fantastic occasion.
The goal by Michael Duffy, unfortunately, it doesn't count for anything now.
Yeah.
But a moment like that, it was, for anyone who was in the stadium,
Yeah.
I know you say a great team like Dundalk score goals like that, but it felt like the game was over. Everyone's just waiting for the whistle. Yeah. Reminiscent in some ways of Robbie Keane, Ibaraki, your knockdown. It felt like all hope was lost. There's just something even more special about a goal like that when I think everyone's just resigned to defeat.
And I don't think we see too many goals nowadays when the ball hits the net and comes back out and the goalkeeper still hasn't moved. It was just incredible, the technique that he used and the drama that ensued, because we were sitting, we were in the nice seats. Underneath us were all the Shamrock Rovers with the flares and all the fans and what have you. And the joy and pandemonium that was in place, waiting for the whistle to go, they thought they'd won the thing. And to feel that drain in a moment, it was just unbelievable. It was like a gasp, like thousands of people gasping at the same time. And it knocked the stuffing out of everyone. Everyone's there going, oh my God, like it was just abnormal. It was just, but at the same time, and it's Dundalk, you know, why should you be surprised? And I think Dundalk had an advantage at that point, and if I was critical, it's hard to be critical, it was a great team, great effort. The first 5 minutes of extra time, they could have really kicked on, I thought, and drove home the advantage that they got by scoring so late, but it didn't. It petered out in extra time, I felt, and they were all just a little bit standoffish. They didn't go for the jugular.
It shouldn't take away, Damien, from another brilliant season for Dundalk. 5 League of Ireland titles now in the last 6 years. After you left the Premier League, you came back and you played in the League of Ireland with Cork City and Waterford. You would have gone up against this Dundalk team. Just how good were they?
Yeah, they're a fantastic team. They're by far and away the best team in the country, best team that we played against. I think Rovers play a nice brand of football, but they're more possession-based. I think Dundalk have a fantastic blend of killer instinct and also can play well. Watching the game yesterday, obviously, it was a good game, it wasn't a fantastic game, it was cagey, it was a cup final. But I think what yesterday showcased is the potential of the League of Ireland is huge. You know, I mean, when there's Premier League teams come here for that Champions Cup game, we fill the Aviva. Yesterday, great crowd, great atmosphere, which proves there is an appetite there for it. So it just means getting it right. And it's been unloved, the League of Ireland. I'm a massive fan of it. It was always an ambition of mine that I held to. I wanted to come back and play in it because I really do enjoy it, and I love watching it and I love following it. I grew up watching it, standing in the shed in Turner's Cross, and I love that, you know. So I wanted to come back and experience it, and I have experienced it. And from where I was, I fully expected that it wasn't going to be the same, or it wasn't going to be even close. But I can understand when young kids come back from the UK, because I think that's the bit that you're missing out on in the League of Ireland. Everyone talks about get the league right and we can stop kids going. You're never going to stop kids going, but there's a flood of people coming back that you can pick up. Now, I can tell you from my experience personally that when you come back, when you face into the training grounds, the stadium, the travel, the organisation, the fixture list, whatever it may be, there's an awful lot to delve into there that you can fix and make it a happier ground for kids coming back to reignite their love for the game. And I spoke with you guys on your radio show before that when you've been through the ringer in the UK and you come back, you almost follow the love in the game. We all hear that story where you need to give a ground for these kids now, and an environment, for them to fall back in love with the game. And I think that obviously Niall has his plans, and I think like that's where we should be targeting, to catch those kids coming back.
Bohemians has been a great example of that this season, though, with the amount of players that have come back and they've flourished in that environment that's been created at Bowes. I think Dundalk are on a different level. They don't potentially need that type of player to take the risk on them, but it is important. But it's twofold, you're right. I think some players come back and they expect the same standards of what they had at the big clubs in England, and then they maybe feel sorry for themselves. They don't approach it in the right way, but I totally agree. There's areas that still need improving.
But if they're coming back to some place like Dundalk with the success they've had at European football, and also Dundalk is one of the great footballing towns in this country. The history is there. That's
just one club. Maybe Rovers as well are probably the only two. With the amount of coming back, we should have 12 clubs that are on that level of that standard, so we can hoover up an awful lot more of them and reignite that. At the moment, you know, Dundalk squad is stacked as it is. I can't imagine there being too many ins and outs this year. There might be one or two. Rovers, maybe, with the new investment that's potentially coming. That's just my thoughts on League of Ireland.
But Dundalk isn't perfect then either, because like Stephen Kenny would have always been very vocal on the pitch, the facilities at Oriel Park, that for a team that are hoping to make advances towards a Champions League group stage or a Europa League group stage, or whatever newfangled European competition they come up with, that it's not at the standard for a club of Dundalk's ambitions.
It comes down to the finances, and obviously the new owners have deeper pockets, and obviously the European money that they've got in recent seasons. Once that gets reinvested, but that's just one club. Niall obviously knows more about the overall package of the league and how that can be improved.
Well, let me point to a huge problem, right? You've hit it on the head there, okay? Because let me tell you this: when we have a government who give 2.9 million to the whole of football, and the same government gives 16.8 million to greyhound racing, then you know where your problem is. That's a terrible indictment.
There's obviously a lot of historical reasons for that.
Yeah.
The mainly being that the Greyhound Association have been a brilliant lobby for decades upon decades, whereas for reasons that are becoming clearer and clearer, the FAI have not. Like, do you think that that ship has sailed now, that actually trying to get that level of funding from government, particularly when things are as they are and the government aren't giving anything to Irish football right now, we can change that? Yeah,
I'd agree that it was a no-go area for the Exchequer. You've got to use taxpayers' money wisely, and given what we've learned in the last 6 months about the association and the stuff that I think we're going to find out in time, the government are absolutely right, probably not to give it. But now there's a new dawn out there, there's a new chance, a new opportunity. We're speaking about the optimism yesterday in the stadium, we're thinking about the product in general, but we're thinking about football in the country. The government will argue that there's no industry there supporting jobs the way greyhound racing does. Well, I'd argue that there is, and there's capable. If you start putting community support in around football clubs can be more than a team playing at a weekend. They can enrich, they can enliven people's lives, you know. I've seen it, the Sunderland model that I speak about a lot was that when you think about Sunderland, in the last 3 years, Sunderland had their worst 3 years in their history. They've gone bang, 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 down 2 divisions and can't get up. Right? It never happened in their history before. They got up for the last time that happened to them, they got up straight away. And in that time, their Foundation of Light, which is the community project that Sunderland undertook when I was a player there and built it, they brought in 20 million in funding to build the Beacon of Light. And the Beacon of Light stands up now as big as the stadium. And they have 10 outreach centres around the city and the suburbs. And in a city of 400,000 people, they're employing 120 people full-time.
So what are the community officers?
Community officers, bringing learning through football, etc. But what it's really doing is it's making Sunderland so important as a football club to the city of Sunderland. And I think it's a fabulous model that our government should look at. And I think there's a view here, footballers, all the money will go to the footballers. That's not what I would be looking for at all. I think a decent standard of living where footballers are better minded, better protected and better paid as the elite part of the industry. But I think what football clubs can do in communities with government backing, I know myself, because I know how successful the Foundation of Light has been and what it means. I'll give you the quickest story. We introduced a project where out of work fathers who are misplaced from their children, who are not in the family home anymore, we developed a project for them to come in, go to school with their children in the stadium, with classrooms in the stadium. The bell would ring, they would go out and play football, and then we'd come in the second part of the evening, and we try and get the father into work, show him how to help him. Anyway, it went on for a couple of years, and it won a national award. And I was asked to present the guy who got the nomination for us. He was a guy who had earrings, tattoos, a big, heavy, thick set, you know, proper Sunderland lad. And he came up on the stage to accept the award. He started crying. I started crying. It was just, I was going, wow, this is football. And the hair's going up my neck now even thinking about it. This big meatball was rubbing his eyes, like, you know, and going, thank you, I now know my son because of football. And I thought, that's the power that we're missing out here. And when the government looks at it, I'd love them to look at it in a way that they understand that the reality is football is the people's game here. It doesn't matter. I'm from a Gaelic background, but football is everywhere. You know, hurling is strong in Munster, Gaelic football is what it is, but the people's game You know, when the rugby team went to Japan there, I know it was a pity and they didn't do well, but were they like flags going out the windows in Ballyfermot and Finglas? I don't think so, you know. Football is our game, and I think the government should treat it with the respect it deserves, but I also think we should present a product for government that they can't but fund.
Have either of those two things happened over the last 6 months, considering... Because I think the worry, Niall, is that I think everybody 6 months ago, when all this started to kick off, there was a definite sense that change was coming.
Yeah.
And then change hasn't happened, and there's a bit of fatigue creeping in. And listen, I know it's all going to blow up again over the next 2 or 3 months as reports start to come out, but are we missing the opportunity?
It was very disappointing. You know, the group that I was working with were flattened when the governance review group allowed them to reassemble as an association from within their own grasp and appoint 8 of the 12 places on the board. So you're asking 4 new people to go in there on a voluntary basis and take on the might of the FAI that were allowed to reassemble themselves. Now, they'll argue that they're changing, and I get that. There seems to be a shift for change, but the old FAI is still alive and well in terms of, you know, they're just simple things, but they didn't appoint any women on the board. In trim that time, and some women had run for it, and then, you know, straight
there are
after,
independent directors starting to come in, though.
Yes, but the FAI more said, well, the independents can be women. We're not doing the women. You know, this sort of attitude that I think that they have, and you know, I spoke to Donald Conway. I had a civil conversation with him up at Sligo at the semi-final, and he was explaining that change is going to be slow. And it's only going to be slow because the governance review group allowed this thing to crawl back into existence. And for those of us who were really keen to get involved and get stuck in, we thought 7-5 in terms of new people coming in would have got things done, but 8 old V4 incoming directors, of which I'd imagine at least 2 will be ladies. I hope it is, maybe even 3. I think it's not going to change a whole heap. I wish the people coming in well, but it's not going to be simple. The opportunity to move it fast was gone. But on the positive, just look at the optimism and look at the product called the League of Ireland and what it's done in a year. It's freed itself from the shackles of the old FAI regime. The clubs have come together, they've formed a union, and they're looking at alternatives outside of the way they've been treated. You know, to pay 20 grand a year for a licence in the top flight, and then the winners get 100. I mean, that was a racket. You know, when you think about it, no other teams in Europe paying licence fees to have live games on TV, but the clubs get no money. You know, and being told you're lucky to be on TV. Well, actually, for Shamrock Rovers, it was taking 1,000 people off the gate. There's no luck there. So there was a lot that could be changed, and the clubs are beginning to see the light. And I don't know what way they're going to go, but it's great to see the investment that's gone in here in Dundalk. It's great, I think, for the game in general, that Dermot Desmond will invest in Shamrock Rovers, and that looks as if it'll be voted through.
They're delighted about that in Dundalk.
Yeah, I know. But that's it, you see, because I think someone else will come along, I hope, because, you know, things are getting better. You're looking after the future pathways yourselves. You know, the fact that the FAI won't be controlling it the way they used to, I think that's the way this is going to end up. A hybrid model of some involvement of the FAI. I get that. The association must have some involvement. But to be free to bring in your own commercial revenues and to provide community support programs, to lobby government as the elite part of the industry, and not to be stuck as that, you know, unfortunate a time that the League of Ireland was treated so badly by the FAI.
Damien, Niall's obviously very positive about what could happen over the coming years. You've been through the reality of the last couple of years, and before this Dundalk-Shamrock Rovers rivalry, there was the Dundalk-Cork City rivalry. Like, the facts of on the ground of coming to Dundalk for Cork City players, what was that like?
Like, I think yesterday's cup final is the best thing that could happen for Irish football, Rovers winning, because I think if Dundalk won and, you know, they're only going to get further and further away, I know they might not agree with you now, but you guys...
No, they definitely don't.
No, they don't. I know they don't, but they need a rival, you know. They have to have a rival, otherwise it'll become a 4-week season when they're in Europe. So it's a good thing what happened yesterday, because it'll reinvigorate Rovers, and Rovers will come next year with a big, big challenge. And I guarantee if you asked all the Dundalk players, that's what they want as well. They want to be challenged every week. Every season, not just in Europe, but on going for league honours as well, because at the minute it's been a little bit easy for them. And I think, although now you probably look back on the Cork City Dundalk rivalry a little bit differently, you appreciated it for what it was. You know, you'd have to say that, because nobody wants to be like Celtic up in Scotland, where you're just running away with it and you're just planning for Champions League, and, well, worst case scenario, we might get a good run in the Europa League. So I think yesterday was good for Irish football. I think a lot of things need to change. Obviously, Niall just spoke there on government. I don't know a whole lot about that because I've been in the trenches, so to speak, where I kind of been travelling every day and training every day. And a lot of the things that I see need to change won't cost money. It just takes attention. It takes putting the right people in the right positions. And Dundalk obviously have that.
What sort of things?
Pardon?
What sort of things are you talking about?
I like the travel. I know it costs money and things like that, but training grounds, surfaces, equipment, coaching. You know, the more coaches you can get in there, the better that it'll be. I know that Dundalk are a fabulously coached team, so are Rovers, and they have the players to go with it. But I think you need 4 or 5 teams that are on that level.
You need academies.
Yeah, there you go.
You need proper academies where people can feel very safe that there's a future for me here, and I don't have to hope that Lincoln City will come in and give me a week's trial. You know, that you build yourself up as a young player and a young man in this country so that if the call comes to go to England, you're going there as a developed young man, not a boy who's been thrown in at 100 to 1 chance.
Over the years of that Cork-Dundalk rivalry, when you looked at the individuals involved, it was always Dundalk who had the stars, whether it was Richie Towell or Darrell Horgan. Whoever the best player in the Premier Division was tended to be a Dundalk player. Now it's very much a Shamrock Rovers player. And Jack Byrne is the one everybody's talking about. And people seem to have sort of mixed views on his performance yesterday. Probably all the best parts of the game came through Jack Byrne, but did enough good parts of the game come through Jack Byrne? Where do you stand on where he is right now? And can he, in terms of his Ireland ambitions, fulfil them by playing with Shamrock Rovers? And if he was to go to England, what sort of level do you think he'd be at?
Well, I think first and foremost, the question that you need to ask Jack is, does he want to go back? Because playing in the UK and being in that type of environment isn't for everyone, you know. And I met Jack recently at one of your things, and I spoke to him, and he loves being home. He loves staying with his mum. He loves hanging out with his friends. He's comfortable and he's happy. So some people being under that constant pressure that you get in the UK of always transfer windows, players coming in, you're uncomfortable, you're away from home, all that stuff that everybody knows about. So if Jack wants to go back, the type of player that he is has to be the right fit for him. You know, there's no point in him going into another situation that he was in before, like in Oldham or up to Scotland, where he struggled so much. So if I was him, I'd only go for the right offer. And I'm talking a footballing team, a team that's established, a manager that's in a relatively safe environment, that he's not going to get turfed out, because I know that that's what happened to Jack at a couple of clubs where managers promised him things at Blackburn and it didn't happen. I think he's a super talented boy. He's got a lot to add to his game. I think his God-given ability, and I've played against him, and his choice of pass is brilliant, and he can execute as well. So, I mean, a lot of players, you know, can have one or the other, but I remember we played them first game of the season this year at Waterford in the RSC, and he just popped up in the number 10, and there was a run off the back of me, and I kind of hesitated, and he saw it and he played it, and I thought, okay, you're going to get a little bit more respect next time now, because I didn't think you had that ball in. Just a little story that he does have that ability, and
he can spot the weakness in a 37-year-old centre-back, is what you're saying.
No. It was nothing to do. It was nothing to do with me. I'm just saying that the run was made and the pass was played, and it was the correct way and it was the correct time. Everything was right about it, and it was a pass that I'd seen before. Yeah. Yeah, anyway.
He is, I think you saw, Niall, from the reception he got in that Bulgaria game as well, what it meant having him come on, and everybody's already calling from that we need that player who demands the ball in the middle of midfield. We always want that player. Do you think he's ready for it at international level?
You know, you never know. Mick was great at throwing people in. He did it back in the start. All the players he threw in, the Ian Harts of this world, you know, Mark Kinsells, they were all players who weren't bright lights. They were barely coming through at their own clubs, and he just threw them in then. It's in a bit of a rush because Mick's contract is so tight at the moment. It's not that he has a long-term project to do that with players, so I'd worry that way for him. But yeah, everybody wants Jack Byrne to do well, and I even wanted to do well many years before now, because I went to do a game, a Champions League game in Prague. Man City were playing away in Slavia Prague many years ago, and in the morning the kids played Slavia Prague in the UEFA Under-18 tournament, and Jack was all right, looked good, but the game was quite boring that night, and Martin Tyler was great. He said, you enjoyed young Man City's performance this morning, and I spoke for about 20 minutes on Jack Byrne. He's going to be great, he's going to be this, he's going to be that, and I was getting calls from people who knew him. Oh, Jack's thrilled, thank you so much. I was going, jeez, actually he wasn't that good, but you know, I'm Irish, and in fact I got the chance, and I really hope I didn't put a bit too much pressure on him, because the amount of people who come up to me and said, thanks for doing that, Jack's one of ours, you know. And that was probably 6 years ago. And I was still hoping he wouldn't let me down and he'd come through and make it. But very tough at Man City.
It's a tough journey, though, isn't it? Like the life of a footballer, and he's come out that tough side because he could have quite easily gone and kept going. But Damien's touched on it there. He's clearly happy and he's playing good football. So whenever he does go back across, if he does go back across, it has to be to the right type of club. Damien touched on it as well in terms of a manager being safe. There's very few of them, unfortunately. So he's going to need to go back for me at some stage because he is too good for Shamrock Rovers. He is too good to be playing in the League of Ireland. He needs to, when he is ready,
but can a player like him not almost
again.
transform what we think about the League of Ireland if Shamrock Rovers, with the backing of somebody like Dermot Desmond, can create the atmosphere, the financial incentives to keep him there?
That's down the line, though, Nathan, isn't it? I'm talking about here and now. And if he wants to establish himself as a senior Irish international in a position where we haven't got a lot of those players, really, he's different to what we have, isn't he? We've got very good, powerful, athletic, strong midfielders. He's different. He's not Wes Houlihan, but he's got the vision of a Wes Houlihan. He's very, very different to what we have at our disposal. He can go on. He can kick on. He has to use this season and the next few months, whatever he does, as a springboard to go again, because I think he's a very talented player.
One observation I would make of his performance yesterday, he did some really good things, you're right. But there were times when I thought he could have looked for the ball an awful lot more. He could literally go, hey, I'm taking charge of it. And the ball made its way to him at times. I didn't see him demand to be the main man the way he can be. And sometimes the ball ended up with him and it looked great. And he played a couple of great balls out the right side in the second half. I thought, wow, he's got all the vision. And it was kind of Scholes-like, you know, pulling it out, not even looking up, but seeing the picture, knowing that there's somebody on the run and popping it out. But what I'd love to say, right, take it more, get hold of it more, be the controller of the game. He has that ability.
The guy I would like to see in the Ireland squad, and very much playing to the crowd here, but I do believe this, Sean Gannon. Like his consistency over the last 4 or 5 years. And I was just saying it after the match because I thought he was exceptional again yesterday. And then picking up the papers this morning, there was some talk that maybe Matt Doherty picked up an injury for Wolves. Obviously, Seamus Coleman is missing the game. That maybe Sean Gannon might get a call up into the training squad or even make a match day 23. You're at a stage, I guess, with the under-21s, Keith, where you're comparing players constantly who are League of Ireland, who are playing under-23 football, who are playing lower league football. Making that judgment on a player that Mick McCarthy might have to make on Sean Gannon against say, Cyrus Christie, how difficult is that?
Yeah, it's difficult because you have to factor in the opposition, obviously, that they're playing at, the level they're playing at. So you judge him on games like yesterday, where he is playing against the best of what's out there. And all season long, I've seen him probably live 5-6 times. I have to say, I'm with you in terms of how highly I would regard him. Very, very comfortable engine-wise, and he's done it consistently now for a few seasons. So you're right, in terms of where do you compare, a lot of players are picked potentially on reputation. He is playing well here and now. So there's no reason why he can't play.
We had a chat about this last night after the game. Joey O'Brien, who had plenty of caps, was playing right back on the other side, and we were saying, you know, Gannon played much better than him. We felt, you know, he showed as much, if not more. Now, I know Joey's kicking on, and looked at it, and we were just saying after, like, he's just a Rolls Royce, isn't he? He's an athlete, and he's got qualities that I think will end up Dundalk trying very hard to keep him, but he may be the next one that goes over. He really, I thought he stood out yesterday. Everything looked so comfortable for him.
What is his ability, Damien, to spot a weakness of a ageing centre back?
You want to do it again? Yeah. I gave you one.
So I made sure you were sitting over there.
No, look, from playing against him, big fan of his. I think he's a fabulous athlete, you know, first and foremost, a prototype modern day right back who's almost as good an attacker as a winger. Defensively, whether he would, if he did make it the Ireland, whether Mick would play him or not, I think with the way the Ireland team will be set up, it'll be touch defensive. He would have to be more of a sit and serve full-back potentially, and he would have to sit and get narrow and be a good defender, which I'm sure he's capable of doing as well. And I've seen him do that as well at times, but it's a big game to try and find out if he has that in him. I think, you know, throwing him in against the Gibraltar would have been fabulous, because you could have seen him then just absolutely, you know, cascade skating forward and doing what he does, and he, not only does he get in there, he is delivery as well, as I found out several times.
We are here tonight with thanks to Virgin Media Sport, who have over 400 UEFA Champions League, Europa League and Nations League games live this season, and is available to all Virgin Media TV customers, who can also download the TV Anywhere app and stream all the action whenever and wherever they like. The Champions League is obviously back this week. It's something that Dundalk will be aiming for next season. The Shamrock Rovers won't have any chance of playing next season. We'll get on to the Premier League teams and where they may go this season. But Keith, one of the things, and from commentating on a lot of the matches so far this season, that's really struck me, and particularly watching teams from not the top 5 leagues, but teams from Belgium, teams from France outside Paris Saint-Germain, the Dutch teams, they all have one thing I find in common, which is they're attacking players. They all play with a front three, very fast, lightning quick, maybe lacking a little bit of technical ability, but all their attacking players, you're looking at them going, somebody in the Premier League is going to spend 40 million quid on these at some stage. Have you looked at those clubs and thought there's a model that Irish clubs can follow, or are we just developing a very different type of player?
No, like from speaking to the two lads outside and previously as well, there's no doubt there is room for improvement. That's not even up for debate. But what I would say was that we're obviously bringing players into our under-21 squad that have been coached at League of Ireland clubs. And the standard of coaching is far superior than what it was. There's no doubt about that. So we are coaching of a higher level now than what we have been historically. No doubt about it. What type are we producing? It's probably not all in sync. I think it's in sync with the underage teams with Ireland in terms of what they're trying to do, but in terms of how often you have those players, it's very difficult, of course. So where are we in terms of those other leagues? I think they're streets ahead of us, to be perfectly honest. Facilities, what they have at their disposal. It's very difficult to aspire to that level, but we need to obviously...
Yeah, the academy structures at these clubs that you're talking about, these guys aren't fools. They realise if we put a really good structure in place here and we get one of these players away and somebody pays us 40 million, like you said, it's all paid for itself and the whole merry-go-round keeps going and the thing gets better and better. We're not set up to do that, you know, and I think that's one thing, you know, if you look at the last 20 years of the FAI, let's say since the turn of the century, you know, that we don't have a national academy. Like, it went unnoticed, but Northern Ireland launched theirs 8 weeks ago. You know, they've actually got their own academy where players from the clubs come into a specialised unit where they get great education should things not work out, but they get the life of a footballer as well before they're thrust into a bigger environment, and they will be prepared better than us, and they will play to a system, that Northern Ireland way. Jim Magilton will bring that through right the way the first team tries to play. They'll bring it right the way through, and it's attractive. I think we'd all agree Northern Ireland are a good watch, yeah. And they're going to do okay. Now, we should be doing 5 times what Northern Ireland are capable of doing. But we're not doing anywhere near it. And Shamrock Rovers are having a great go at it. I think they're about the best setup that I've seen in the kids.
Underage. The Pats underage as well, to be fair.
Pats do their bit. But really, that should be at a whole different level.
Are you going to apply for the CEO gig?
No.
Now that you've had time to think about it.
No, the CEO gig it needs somebody who can roll their sleeves up and clear out a lot of stuff. It needs a firefighter, I think.
Can you not be that guy?
I used to like get walloped with an elbow in the face in a match, and I'd ask the fellow was his elbow all right after the match. You know, I was a bit too nice for my own good. You know, my nose would be splattered, and I'd be saying, "Are you okay? Are you all right?" You know. So it's not my game. I got exasperated as that whole process went on. When we got such a build-up of hope in May, June, that you know that this is going to be real change, and then it was announced that it's business as usual. It's just dressed up in something different. That was really flat, and I kind of lost a little bit of a will to participate in anything about the FAI, but then the ability to help clubs maybe would have come part. And Kieran Lucid's idea came, you know, at that as well, and that's been discussed. And I know got a bit of a knockback from the association, but the association don't run the league in Northern Ireland. As you know, the clubs run the league themselves, so I don't think it's as fatal as some people were saying out. And I'm a bit of a fan of Kieran's work because of the work that's gone into it. You've seen the background, and it's quite imaginative, it's creative, but of course it needs 3 or 4 of the components to come in with a check. And I think then you might have a different view from the clubs. We hadn't looked at it like that. The group I was looking at, you know, really 2 big things. I mentioned earlier on, you have a title sponsor and you have TV, live TV, and the clubs aren't getting anything out of it. So they're the 2 biggest in all leagues in the world. You know, your league's title sponsor write a big check for the clubs, and the TV companies write checks for the clubs. Our clubs don't do that. our clubs don't get that. And so what we were trying to do was to find a commercial avenue where the clubs could sort out their own futures themselves, hang on to the FAI in some way, a hybrid version of a I hate using this word, but not a breakaway league, but something that moves and makes its own decisions. And it's brilliant that the clubs are coming together to even discuss it, because up to now, most of the clubs, it's just been about how do we survive? How do we go from month to month, week to week even, and always on the hind foot, on the back foot, trying to, I was going to say the hind tit there, can I say that? No.
You've said it now.
You can edit that if it's not allowed. But my view is that it feels like something is happening, and that's where I think the prize is in elite football in this country. Dermot Desmond's thing is another positive step. What happened here at Dundalk, you've seen it, and you saw what the investment meant here. I think it's really positive. I think there'll be like copycats to what Dermot is trying to achieve. And I think if it's done well and they appoint a group, because the clubs they'll fight each other if they try and run this themselves. And the Premier League learned that. Just a bit of a history lesson. First few years of the Premier League, all the clubs were just killing each other. And it was only when they appointed independent executives with no links to any of the clubs that the Premier League actually started to make progress. They could stop fighting themselves. And I think the clubs will learn from that, and they'll appoint a group, I hope. I'm imagining things, but they're going through the Kieran Lucey thing now and let that take its route. But I do hope they will appoint a group to commercially look after their interests as a collective. Locally, do carry on exactly what happens locally, but there are two big paychecks that the football world, the elite football world of League of Ireland, is missing at the moment. And I would love to be part of a group that will be appointed or mandated to go out there and say, okay, what can the clubs achieve, and what can a new look league achieve on the international TV rights market?
All right, we'll see how that develops. Looking at the Champions League, Keith, and before we get on to the English teams, we obviously had an all-English final last year. You're working at Virgin Media Sport, you're watching all the games every week. Away from the Premier League, have you seen any other team you think can compete with them this season?
None of Liverpool and Manchester City play to the level that they can. I really don't, because there's so many of the powerhouses, the usual names, the usual suspects of Madrid, Barca, Juve, Byrne have done well in Europe, but domestically, obviously,
just
having their troubles. Exactly, it's staggering to see what they did to Spurs a few weeks ago, and he's gone. So they would, barring the manager leaving, and I was very encouraged by some of their performances, PSG obviously, but in terms of the two Madrid clubs, disappointing in that let's go on a couple of their performances. Real Madrid look all over the place, no legs in midfield, defensively shambolic at times. So no, I've got huge hopes for the two English clubs, those two in particular, that they can go again and go very, very far. The thing to factor in this is that the group stages, a lot of these clubs will still get through the groups, and then by the time it comes to the nitty-gritty of February, March, when it comes to the tough games, they tend to be able to flick it on for big games, park up what goes on domestically, and big players can produce big performances on any given night. So that is the worry.
Well, I guess a prime example of that would be Barcelona, who even during last year's group stage sort of flattered to deceive, yet still beat Liverpool 3-0 in the first leg of a Champions League semi-final, and they do have Lionel Messi. Why do you think they're not quite at the level of 5-6 years ago? Is it simply that you can't replace Xavi and Iniesta, or have they made a number of mistakes?
They tried to reinvent the team, didn't they? They tried to bring it on a level, and certain players have come in and tried to partner Messi. This year it's been Griezmann. It hasn't quite clicked. Suarez, that little bit older, not as dynamic, having to change the way that he plays his game as well. And in midfield, the balance, since the glory days of that midfield you've just spoke about, they just haven't hit those heights defensively as well. When you're not as effective in the top end of the pitch, you need to be a little bit better maybe defensively, and that hasn't been the case. So no, I don't see them as ones that I'll be hanging my hat on to win it, but they're certainly capable in terms of personnel. And that man that you've mentioned, Messi, if he produces, he can rip up any game.
I have a little bit of theory in that. Sorry, Nathan. Messi was so good, but that old team weren't too far away from him. They were really good as well, and now he's sort of way ahead of some, and they're not quite getting the best out of themselves, because it is such a one-man show that they're not developing the way Xavi or Iniesta had developed along in that pattern. And I think it might laugh at me now, but when the great man eventually leaves Barcelona, they might come good again. It sounds like I'm trying to get rid of him.
You're going to say that Barcelona will be better when Lionel Messi leaves.
At 39. At 39. I just think it is an issue because he is so important to them. It's ridiculous. Whereas in the old days, he was just brilliant, but he had brilliance all around him.
Damien?
I think the one team that have been, if they don't win it this year in Juventus, I think they've been gearing for this. I saw a list of their 211s the other day. Both of them could win Sierra comfortably, and I think that's what they're doing. They want their top players as fresh as can possibly be come March time for the big games. Because I think the problem that a lot of teams have is they have a good starting 11. Come March, a lot of them are just off it a little bit because they're a touch tired and whatnot. So I think they've assembled a squad to get to March, to get to April, and have your top 11 as fit and as fresh as they could possibly be. And if Juve don't win it this year, I'm not sure I won't say they're going to get another chance, but I think it's the ideal chance for them this year because, as Keith just said there, the two Madrid teams are off it. There's something not quite right at Barca. I think there's something not quite right at Man City. They're good. They're not as flawless as what they were last year. So I think Liverpool have been pretty good this year in terms of grinding out results. I think it's prime for Juve.
The fear for Liverpool and City is you've already heard Klopp going on about the schedule and the World Club Championships and the Carabao Cup, and it's a FA Cup coming just after the hectic festive fixtures. Juve, Atletico, they can domestically they can rest players. Liverpool can't do that because the Premier League still is very, very competitive. Aston Villa only just got promoted, and look at the troubles they caused them at the weekend. They haven't got the luxury of doing that.
The difference with Liverpool this season, Damien, and you spoke about this at the start of the season, people are questioning them maybe defensively, that they're giving up more opportunities, they're not keeping as many clean sheets, they're playing a very, very high line. Even that game against Tottenham, I would say for half the match, all 10 outfield players were positioned inside the Spurs half. You've played against that type of system. Why is Jurgen Klopp doing that?
It's basically they smother you. A lot of teams have this 5-second rule, where they turn the ball over and they want to win it back as high up the pitch, and it's become almost a lot of coaches talk about countering a counter. They talk about it's a perfect, when you lose the ball in the final third and the other team thinks, oh, we're on a counter-attack here, and everyone starts running forward. If you can win that ball back quickly, it's the best way to get at teams, and that's what they're trying to do. Counter a counter, really, essentially. It's very, very, very difficult to play against, when the ball turns over and you've kind of been working hard to win it back, ball comes to your feet, and you just see 3 red jerseys coming towards you, and you're trying to catch someone with the corner of your eye, and it's almost just trying to force something you shouldn't force, or you're just getting it away, and then the attack comes again, really.
Is there not a massive risk, though, that you do get caught on the counter? Because that was the one thing I thought watching the Tottenham game, that if Harry Kane just stays up on Van Dijk's shoulder.
They'll hedge their bets that that'll happen. So if they get the press right, they won't get out as often. No, listen, if you can pass through that, and you've seen examples of it over the course, if you can find into a 10, one pass could take 4 or 5 players out of the game, and then and if you've got legs to get up with them, that's what you're trying to do. It's very, very, very difficult when the ball comes to you on a turnover and you're looking to whip one around the corner and you're just getting flooded straight away. You can hear people coming from behind you. It's difficult. So rather than, turn the ball over and drop off and let the opposition get set, they just want to win it back out of the pitch. They want to set this tempo and just basically, we're going to set a tempo that you can't live with.
They're getting braver and braver, though, aren't they? Do you remember when Vidic and Ferdinand, as a two, marked 2 centre forwards? Normally you would have a full back to make that extra man, whereas Manchester United at that time pushed them on. We're comfortable as a 2v2 at the back because they had pace, but certainly Ferdinand did. Now we're going on a level, aren't we, in terms of how brave teams are being in possession by locking right on. But the one thing that Liverpool have in particular is pace at the back. Van Dijk, you seen what he did to Mbappe last year? Phenomenal. So that confidence that they have that, okay, if he breaks, we can deal with that.
I think Lovren at the minute is probably the 4th choice centre back, and in an ideal world he'd kind of be there in an emergency, but he seems to be playing regularly recently. He seems to be playing a lot. I think it's Van Dijk and Matip, or Van Dijk and Gomez. He hasn't got the other two now, and Lovren is playing week in, week out, and unfortunately with this high press, Lovren just has one mode, and that's front foot. I've never seen the guy take a backward step. He will just try and win everything. And unfortunately with him, when he gets it wrong, he gets caught bad. And I watched a Champions League game against Napoli, and they got in about 4 times with just one. So one way to beat that high press I was talking about is just to launch it. Your 2 centre-backs have to be so in tune and so together there that if one's gone tight, the other one covers. I saw Van Dijk go tight, and all of a sudden Lovren was going as well, and they were leaving huge gaps in behind, and they weren't covering each other especially well. And I think he's been overused he's a Carabao Cup or an early round FA Cup or a Watford away in the Premier League type guy to give someone a breather. It's no disrespect to him, he's a very, very good player, don't get me wrong, but he's playing in big games now that he wouldn't have ordinarily thought he should be playing in because of the injury situation.
It almost feels, Keith, when you're watching Liverpool, it's like some sort of human version of pinball, that the ball just keeps getting pinged back again and again and again. And you watch that against Tottenham where they clear it, Fabinho would pick the ball up, he'd give it to one of the wing-backs, they'd smack it in, it'd come out, he'd pick it up again, and it's just repetition, and eventually they break them down and they get their goal. And like, they're playing so many teams who sit back and defend, and it worked as well at the weekend against Aston Villa. But what Damien's talking about there, picking out the right passes, if they're playing that sort of system, and I'm not sure if they really played it to this extent last season, in a Champions League quarter-final, semi-final against Barcelona, Real Madrid, Juventus, are they going to get caught out against more talented teams?
Possibly, yeah, because Damien's tried to explain there about certain ways of taking advantage of that. One way is passing around it, and the best European teams will obviously be able to do that. Will they be able to be as adventurous and as proactive and positive with it? No, probably not. They'll probably need to tweak things, but the one thing they would have to take away from the game then is the two fullbacks are probably the most creative players in their team because of how much wit they play with and the delivery and the confidence that they're playing with. So you don't really want to be taking that back. So the one that you have to get the shackles on a little bit is probably Fabinho. But he's outstanding at winning the ball back and screening and covering and dropping into areas if someone like Lovren does get caught out a little bit. But it's a risk, isn't it?
I think a good way to look at this, when you spoke earlier about teams bringing in young players, it's a young man's game now. You know, I mean, all these guys are 21, 22 years of age. And when these full-backs are pushed in, the midfield players are pushed in, and the ball turns over and you go full press, if they beat the press with one pass, the centre-back's job then all of a sudden is slow this down. Don't commit and quicken up the counter-attack, slow it down. Because if you've got serious legs at full-back and you're 2'8" and you're 6, they're coming. And the statistics or the modern player can cover 10 metres a second, right? So a player flat out in the pro zone stats is 10.1, 10.2 metres a second. So if you can slow a counter-attack down 1 or 2 seconds, that's 20 metres. And your players like Robertson and Trent Alexander-Arnold, my God, the cavalry will be coming very, very quick. So when they do beat the press, the centre-back's job or the sixth job isn't to go, oh my God, they beat the press, panic, make another bad decision, and now all of a sudden no one's getting back. Slow down, control it, get it wide, so you're buying yourself another couple of seconds because the cavalry will be coming.
I think it's just really keen to hear these things. I think that's what Van Dijk does. He almost slows down fast things that are happening, and he's buying time.
That's what it is, because the cavalry's coming.
Yeah, it's amazing. Because now you've described. I'll use it now, but I'll give you a bit of credit.
10 metres a second, Niall. Sound familiar?
By the way, listen, I think my most was about 9-4, but I thought about in my club I can only speak about is the, Wilfred Zaha and stuff like that. I mean, they're 10-1, 10-2 when they're flat out, right? Obviously, when they're up and running, and that's their full sprint range, which is almost, a young Usain Bolt's on 1,000,000 miles away from that. Obviously, you got the start and all that, so he could never do the 100 metres, but I'm saying his top speed is in 1,000,000 miles away,
What about your former club then, Manchester City? Damien suggested that maybe all isn't right, and I guess how could it be considering the amount of injuries that are there? And there's also the weight of expectation on Pep Guardiola and the importance that they're placing on the Champions League.
Yeah, if you remember this time last year, he said we can't win it, we can't win the Champions League, and he's not saying that this year because he realises that it's going to do a couple of very big things if they win the Champions League. I think having retained the Premier League title, that was a big one for the City fans because United had done that. Okay, winning the league, Leicester had done that. But to win it and to win it the year after, I think that was the sweetest thing about Manchester City's year last year. They went damn close. Remember the moment when Guardiola jumped, thinking that they'd scored against Spurs? Pochettino was on his knees. VAR turned that around in seconds. So they weren't far off last year. I think they lost it last year in the selection that he made in London for the first leg. When they didn't fire at all, he made some strange selections that they Delph, I think, played one or two others. But just to go directly at your question, I think they would be forgiven by their fans if they win the Champions League this year, whereas the rest of us think it's the one bit that's missing on this whole Man City journey, the last 10 years of where Man City has come as a club. They're missing that Champions League badge on the shirt. And the competition has gone so big now, it's epic. And the fact that they won 2 league titles in a row, I think it does mean, right, okay, let's be champions of Europe. And Guardiola needs it. Personally, it sounds stupid after all the success he's had, but at this point, we're always pointing back to 2012, is it? I think, as far as we look at the stats. And
it's hard to go all in on the Champions League, though, because you talk about the Spurs game last year.
Yeah.
City, we all thought had won that game, and we're looking at it completely differently.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. And it is a cup competition in the end, and that's maybe why it's so dramatic. I mean, what Ajax were doing all year, and then to blow it the way they did against Spurs in the last minute. But it's a phenomenal competition. It's packaged brilliantly. I know, okay, I work on it with Virgin Media, the lads, but you feel enthralled after some of those nights. You feel you need a rest after commentating on some of those Champions League games that I never felt like watching the Premier League. It's just breathtaking stuff. And I guess while you tried to play it down last year, Guardiola, I think even he knows, you know what, this could be the real crowning of my time at Man City if I get a Champions League, because Liverpool are going to be so hard to beat in that league.
He needs it, though. I think he needs the Champions League. We spoke earlier about Messi. I mean, he's not won the Champions League away from Barcelona, so I'd love to know how much internal pressure he's putting on himself to kind of, you look at Cristiano Ronaldo has done it, at 2 different clubs, won 4, different leagues, everything, whereas Pep's not won it without Messi. And I think to be considered a true genius, he will need to win it at Man City or another type of club.
I think that's extremely harsh, and it's what gets thrown at him all the time that he didn't do it at Bayern Munich, and all the finances as a Man City. It's so competitive, and as you well know from yesterday, it's a cup, and that Spurs game, they should have got through it. I don't know what more you can do. You need luck, and I hear you. That Bayern Munich team, he took over from the treble winner, just won the Champions League. He ripped it up, threw something at that team that had never been done before, played with such panache, style, brought it on another level. Every week was just unreal to watch. And what he's brought to the Premier League, you cannot guarantee Champions League success.
But should Manchester City not have been at a level above Spurs, considering the amount of money he has spent and the talent he has compared to what Spurs have?
That's a fair argument. That is a fair argument, but I think they did enough to win it. They obviously didn't get through, but coming into this one, my 2 favourites, like I've said right from the off, are Liverpool and Manchester City. The 2 of those could go out in the quarter-final stage because of certain teams around Europe priming themselves, like Juve, like Damien's saying, Bayern Munich, if they get the right type of manager. It's such a tough competition to win. I don't think we can just judge Guardiola on that, but I think you're right. Privately, and internally in Manchester City, that's the one. That is the one.
And speaking of Spurs, just a very interesting thing here that not a lot of people picked up on, but Liverpool lost a Champions League final in really difficult circumstances, and they came back a wounded tiger, and they were fantastic last year. And to do what they did to Barcelona in the semi-final, it was just monumental stuff. Yet Spurs lost the Champions League final, and it looks as if the whole club has fallen apart.
The world's over, yeah.
It's amazing, and I fear a little bit for Spurs. If Kane decides, I've had enough of this, I need a move now, I can see them actually dropping a level, and maybe Man United, Chelsea, or somebody coming in and taking up that space every time.
Is that down to the different personalities of the managers?
I just think this has been coming for a while. Like last season, the way he navigated them to a Champions League final and top 4 with the stadium trouble playing in Wembley, the lack of signings, I thought they just did a remarkable job to just keep it going in that direction. And it just seems to have just gone this season where it's all come to a head, stuff behind the scenes, players not happy, last year a contract. I'm with Niall. I don't think it's too far away from properly imploding.
Don't forget, everybody, if you want to hear Damien Delaney's opinions been rehashed by Niall Quinn, Virgin Media Sport is very much the place. They are freeing sport for customers by including a wide range of sports in their TV packs as standard. We are going to take a very quick break, but we are going to look back on the 3 lads' Ireland careers. We're going to try and figure out why Trapp loved Keith Andrews, but just never found it in his heart to really love Damien Delaney. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back in just a moment. All right. You 2 lads have a bit of history, do you? You go way back?
Oh, Jesus,
Self and Damien. Yeah.
I was a young
Yeah.
Hull Keith, was it?
Hull. Yeah,
Hull, the first one.
Damien was a bit of a club legend at Hull. He's already been down and
I was at Hull when it was like unfashionable and it was just kind of...
It was still unfashionable.
No, hang on a minute. Hang on a second. No, Hull City went through an Irish fashion thing when all them lads showed up about 2 years after I left, and that irked me a little bit because I was like, no one cared about Hull. I was like, well, I'm not at Hull anymore. But then like Stephen Quinn and Paul McShane, Rob, Hunty, they all shot Myler. There was loads of them, and Hull was always big then. But look, it's a great club, and me and Keith had a good time there, man. Do you remember that pre-season we went away to Spain? I got a good story for Keith. Keith will tell you now, right? Keith was an argumentative type when he was a player. Never. Like, he would always be in that. Like, I remember one morning he was called to do some extra training or something. Or someone called you down, was it? And it was one of those Spanish hotels in the hills, and there was like...
it was Benavis, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was it. And there was the breakfast area, a bit of glass in the courtyard. And
Can I just say, I don't know where you're going with this.
I do. I remember like we were sitting down having breakfast and he was upset about something and he'd never listened because he was always upset about something or someone. And I think the gaffer was walking through and he was like, right, get him now. And he called it. He said, can I see you outside, please? But rather than go somewhere private, they went into the little courtyard. Do you not remember that? No?
Kind of.
And it was Phil Parkinson. And you were like sat in the courtyard on full view. It was like a stage. And all you saw was Keith at breakfast. Fucking fingers were fucking going. And this point and that point. And he came in here right, he told man. I think that was you left not long after that. And everyone was saying, he's signing his debt warrant, but he was animated in the hand. No one could hear what he was saying. It was like a mime show, but he was going hard at it. And everyone came in and went, Keith, you can't talk to the manager like that. Nah, I'm telling him no, I told him. He left.
He was a bit, we rubbed each other up the long way, to be fair.
Yeah,
it was mainly the fitness coach.
The fitness coach, wasn't it? Yeah.
He was a very arrogant man. He was. Look, I've always been like, you treat people as you find them. I didn't feel like I was getting treated with a lot of respect. It was the days of 4-4-2. The club captain was a centre midfielder. He signed another centre midfielder, and there was two of us left. And he was obviously weighing up, do I want Keith to be sub and knocking around there, or shall I go with it was John Welsh, wasn't it? Yeah. So, look, it was better off I left anyway.
When you now look at, and you're obviously coaching with the Irish under-21s, when you look at young players now, if one of them had your attitude, how would you take it?
Yeah, I always try and factor that in. I do, I genuinely do. And I look, players have changed. And, when Niall started playing towards the end of it, and likewise when we started playing, and players, generation, society, it all changes. I just think in general you have to be very honest with players. That's an absolute must for me. You can't tell them things that aren't factual. You can't be telling someone they're playing very well or the reason they're left out or whatever. And if it's not accurate, but you certainly have to treat players a little bit. But yeah, in terms of dealing with someone that was a little bit like me, maybe in my earlier years, or some of the players I'm sure Niall's played with, difficult, but they are different now. There's no doubt about that.
Definitely, that's definitely one thing I've noticed. There's not many players like that would do what Keith did that morning. Like, where he's like, I've seen him, and he made a beeline for him. He was like, right, I need to see you, and just grab. I was like, jeez, you politely asked. I think it stemmed
from there was a thing. There was an early morning running club, and he wanted me out of the football club, so he kept putting me in this. Even though I was one of the fittest at the club.
It was about 6 a.m, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I was like, why am I running with John Parkin, who's 18 stone? He's turning up for these runs, eating like a sausage roll. and we're doing these jogs for 45, 50 minutes, and I'm just bored. Because it's just plodding along, and the fat lads are just like sweat pumping off them, and I'm like, this is ridiculous. So I was obviously making that point to Phil. Very good. But in fairness to what I would say is, so I never really had any kind of dealings with him after that. After I left Hull, I went to MK Dons. And then you start doing a bit of TV work, and obviously I'm doing his teams. I would never, ever let that affect what I think of him. Like that was his absolute prerogative then. You can't let that fester on, and like him covering his bolt again. It's very easy to have little digs here and there, but park it up.
Just so happened the Bolton were terrible.
Exactly. That's like just what? Yeah.
But in Keith's defence, the fitness course didn't last long after he went, because the fitness coach was rubbing up a lot of players the wrong way. And I think for parents, it went not long after that anyway. So maybe there was some validity in what Keith was saying. It was just more. Keith. It was just more how he went about it. Was the good bit about it.
Were you a storm into the office if you weren't getting your way kind of guy?
No, my first time really being brought into the office, George Graham brought myself and Martin Keown in. We were fighting and training, and he wrote out a big thing on the blackboard: discipline, spelled D-I-S-P-L-I-N. And I made the stupid mistake saying you spelt it wrong. So that didn't go too well, so I shut my mouth in future whenever I was brought in. I was always fighting with Martin Keown, and then he went up to Aston Villa, fought with him then whenever I played against him, and unlike Keith being very charming about somebody who's played there, I still have a go at Martin whenever I can. But he should have played for Ireland. His mum and dad were from Ireland. He was typical Irish player. He was strong, aggressive, and he decided he wanted to play for England. So that was another reason why. But
by scrapping on the training ground, do you mean like were punches thrown, or was this just?
Full blast, everything, hammer and time. It happened regularly. We got sent in many times. We used to have this exercise, and when I think about it now, say 6 of you around, and the 2 lads in the middle. You throw a ball up in the air, and you got to win the header. And in the end, it's just getting stupid. You're doing haymakers on each other, and it always ended up. And they used to do it. They used to laugh. Quinny and Martin, you go in and go, "Oh, here we go," and you're getting it, so you have to do it, and it's just great. And eventually it goes too far, and we were getting sent in all the time. But training was barbaric then. Like the lads won't even believe me. Like it was colour TV now. I'm not back in the black and white days, but I was a long time ago. But at Arsenal, when I was a kid, you did your training in the morning, you did all that, and then you were always in the afternoon, and you got a voucher to go down to the fish and chip shop for a pie, chips, and a Coke. And then running around the afternoon, you're kind of. It was just a different time, and when I used to drink a lot and all the rest of it, you played snooker, went to the bookies and drank, right? That was the life of a footballer then. And it goes, how did you wait? Everyone was doing it, every club was doing it. You'd go out somewhere and you'd find all the lads from Spurs or all the young lads from QPR would be there, and it was just the culture at the time. And sure, I joined in. Who was I to change it?
Joined in or led the way?
I did both. I remember my mother telling me the most important thing I'll do is you'll have a couple of friends, pick good friends. And my 2 were Tony Adams and Paul Merson. Anyway, I love the 2 of them to bits. Like Tony's gone daft as a brush. He's in a different planet these days, but he's lovely. I'm mad about him. And Paul is just such entertainment value all his life. He's had it tough. The gambling has really cut him up. But he's a martyr for it, and there was something great about that time because Arsenal paid us buttons. My contract was up when George Graham took over the club. I'd played for 18 months in the first team, and I was in line. I thought I was going to get a new contract, or am I not? And I went in to see George Graham, and he said, "I'm not sure about you. I'll give you a year on the same money." Now, about 4 years later, I could have had a Bosman and said, "Feck you, I'm going off somewhere else," because the world changed, the Bosman ruling. And I went out to ring my mother and tell him, "I've got a job for a year." I was so thrilled to have a year's contract. The money didn't even come into it. You'd no agents then. Nobody had an agent. And I remember just coming out of the room going, "Yes, I've got a year," And I played all that year as well, but then he signed Alan Smith then, and he the day before he signed Alan Smith, he brought me and said, "We love what you're doing, give you an extra few quid, and we're going to sign you in a 4-year deal." So I was delighted. Signed Alan Smith the next day, and I was caught then because Alan Smith was a great player, and he'd done me really. But that's what it was like in those days. It was different,
You're obviously still, by the sounds of it, very well connected with a lot of the players you played with at Arsenal and throughout your career, and certainly with the players you played with at Ireland. It's obviously changed completely now in football in that there doesn't seem to be, certainly there's not those type of nights out anymore. Maybe there's not that connection that when you move on, players play for so many different clubs. Like, you didn't get the money, but
Would you swap it? You're right. No, I wouldn't change a thing. I mean, some of the great times. This is terrible. I think I played over 90 times for Ireland. I hardly remember any of the football, but the nights out were just fantastic. You know, I've drank in the best places all over Europe. I've had nights out. I mean, we went to America once. We didn't qualify for I think it was 92, around that time. We didn't qualify for the Euros, and we played the Pepsi Cola Cup or something it was called in America, and the last game finished, say, on a Monday, and we weren't going back till the Wednesday. And we went to the pub for 2 days. Like, it was just incredible. And I can remember we were leaving the hotel at 3 o'clock, and somebody at about 10 to 4 went, we're meant to have left. So you imagine the Irish team, about 15 of us came back in 4 taxis, got out. Jack had gone on his own. He'd buggered off to the airport. Mick McCarthy had took charge, and the physio, Mick Byrne, had packed for us all. And we got onto the plane, and Jack gave a big speech there. He said, if any of you drink on the flight on the way home, you'll never play for Ireland again. We're all looking very shocked, and Ronnie Whelan went, well, if we all drink, you can't be right. And it seemed like a good idea. And we got off at the other end, blitzed as well, like, you know, and can't remember getting home, but they were the good days, you know. No phones, thank God.
I definitely caught the change over there. It wasn't quite as bad as what Niall was, but like one of the big dates in the football calendar is a Christmas do. So, I mean, this was, you know, when I was starting out, I went with Leicester with some of the similar lads, and it was a big deal, and it was planned from maybe October, and it was a 2-night affair, and there was rules and regulations, and obviously I tried to carry that on then, keep the tradition going, but you started running into roadblocks when, you know, some of the foreign lads came in, and some of the young lads coming through, they didn't have that culture. So I'm trying to organise a Christmas do and putting all the same rules in place, and these lads who don't drink and they don't go out, and it was very, very difficult, but I persevered for a couple of years, and then I gave up because there was only about 4 of us wanted to go on a double header and show up on a Sunday again and stuff. So it's changed now, like, you know.
We were nearer to the fans, you know. Like, you could go for a drink in a pub and they wouldn't be taking phone things of you and sending it and saying, look at them, they're a disgrace, they were out. You know, so you were nearer, and nobody wore big earphones getting off the bus, so they didn't have to sign autographs and stuff. You know, it was actually, because you weren't paid well, you know, a pat in the back was good. You know, you nearly looked to sign the autographs, you know, because it wasn't what it is now. I mean, it became sort of Hollywood, really, rock star stuff for the footballers, and I'm glad that I actually didn't have that, because it was bad enough with the small few quid they gave me, with the horses and the drinking and what have you. But if they gave me too much of it, I would have just probably imploded. But in fairness, it didn't succumb me. It did Paul Merson, and several times he lapsed. And Tony, you know, Tony did everything at 100 miles an hour, including driving his car into a wall. On his way to England duty, but he went to prison and changed his life around incredibly well. And we both got married within 2 weeks of each other, and we were really, really close. Obviously went to each other's weddings, and there was when his problems happened to him, I wrote to him when he was in jail. You know, because not like now. We wrote letters in them days with stamps. Do you remember that? And I can remember when he came out, he was changing his life, and I went, "Is there anything I can do?" And he went, "Yeah, stay away from me." And then a year later, 2 years later, Paul imploded, and very publicly imploded with gambling problems and drinking problems, etc. And I rang his dad, "Is there anything I can do?" And I got the same answer from his dad, yeah, just leave Paul alone. So that was tough today. I actually got really annoyed about that. And on both of them, I bore a grudge stupidly myself for a number of years. And Paul came up to Middlesbrough, and I was at Sunderland. And he was there for 2 years, and I didn't even go the 10 or 12 miles to meet up with him. That's how bad it got. And eventually I got sense. And then we met at Sky and we became great friends again. But football is a bit like that, isn't it? It's such a village in many ways.
And could you not step back from it and think, do you know what, actually, maybe the best thing, because your life was going a different way, you were still able to go and drink and have a bet and do it in moderation. But, well, but they obviously weren't. That actually the best thing for them wasn't to be around you.
Yeah. Okay. All right. It was all my fault. Okay, Nathan. All right. I hear what you're saying.
No, I'm not saying that, but you can see, like, they obviously went to absolute depths.
It's this seat, isn't it? There's something about this seat. You get hammered with it. Yeah, looking back, I mean, I could handle it probably better than the lads. And I had a dual life, particularly in London. I had my life with Paul and Tony and that social life that involved. But I also had Irish friends, and, you know, we were going to see Declan Nerney and, you know, in Galtymore or the Gresham Ballroom or something, you know. So I had that life, and then you had a football life. And I think hanging around with Irish people was a great help to me, you know, just kept me grounded. You know, the type of people I was hanging around with, you know, you wouldn't let them down by doing something stupid wherever I was, whether it was with the footballers. And it was great to have a few points, but it was good. And I escaped. You see, where it was different, when it come time to go to the nightclubs, I'd go to see Gina Dale Hayes and the Champions or something in Kilburn. The lads would go up to the swankiest nightclub in London, and that's when the trouble would start. They'd meet villains, and the whole thing would go to where it went. So I was lucky. That Irish angle really helped me in those 5 or 6 years when I was young and naive.
I mentioned just before the break that the Trapattoni era that unites you two in your international careers. You played in Trapattoni's first game in charge against Serbia. I think you made your debut about 6 months later. You ended up playing 9 times for Ireland. You got, 35, 36 caps in the end, and you were very much a mainstay of the entire Trapattoni era. What was it, do you think, that he was looking for that you found such favour, whereas it never quite happened for you?
Well, I think Trapattoni was very dead set on what he wanted. He knew what he wanted. He knew the type of players he wanted for the positions that he wanted. You know, I remember Kev Kilban was at left back, John O'Shea right back, Sean St Ledger and Richard Dunn. And I remember Sean St Ledger probably had more international caps in the last 3 years than he did club games, you know, but he always came in, he always played really, really well for Ireland, and it was brilliant. So obviously my strengths didn't fit what he wanted. Keaton, Glenn had a great partnership there in midfield, and I think they dovetailed brilliantly, and I think that's what Trapattoni, you know, everyone, you say, oh, he never comes and watches games, he never goes to England, or, you know, and he didn't need to, because he didn't really, I won't say he didn't care how the club career was going, he just wanted you to come in and do exactly what he wanted. And I think Keaton and Glenn fulfilled the needs of what he wanted. And I obviously didn't for whatever reason, which was fine, because the team was successful and going well. But I was happy to come in every time and traipse all over Europe, and, you know.
It's difficult as well, isn't it, doing that, and you probably don't appreciate it at the time. I was obviously playing every game and delighted to be playing. My timing was really good in terms of getting a move to Blackburn. Stephen Reid got injured, and there was a bit of an opening in central midfield. Stephen Ireland was Stephen Ireland. So there was an opening there for someone to come in, and there was a B international. I think it was probably the last B international, played at Daly Mount Park.
Played Nottingham Forest, wasn't it?
Yeah, so I got a crack at the whip, felt like I played well, was in the squad then, and obviously never left it. But I can imagine it was very frustrating for some of the lads, like David just said, traipsing around Europe, because he never changed the team, did really. Yeah. Second campaign, tweaked a couple of positions, but yeah, it was
also the time when the internationals were on the Saturday and Wednesday, and do you remember, like, you'd be in Albania on Wednesday night and you'd have a club game on Saturday, and you wouldn't get back till Thursday, and, you know, now it's different because they give the players more of a break and stuff like that, so you're kind of travelling, you're not playing. And, you know, when you're away, you just eat and you just sit and, you know, there's nothing else to do. So there's always food around or something going on, and you go back to your club games and you always play terrible. I was always like, you know, at least you played, so you got it out of your system. But I remember going to the gym in Montenegro, like, and just doing a running session at like midnight after a game, because I was like, I need to do something because I got a game on Saturday, and I was just, my whole thing was, how do I get back to my club in as good a shape as possible, because I feel the 10 days I'm having here is costing me, you know. So, like,
it must be strange to talk about an Ireland career like that, because, like, you live the dream, and, like, everybody here, the young lads here, their dream is to play for Ireland and to be involved, and you imagine it to be this incredible thing, and to talk about it like it ends up in sort of drudgery by the end.
No, but I never ever complained about that. I did it all the time, and I would do it again, no problem, because, you know, it's not like your club, if you're not playing, you can knock on the door and leave, but your club, you're patriotic, and I came in, and I always got a cap here and there and whatever, and it kind of kept me going, but every time my name was announced, I came in and I diligently did it, so I've got absolutely no regrets. It was just, unfortunately, I was around at a time where Donny was unbelievable, and Ledge
just turned into a completely different human being whenever he landed in Dublin, because he was fantastic at that time as well. So for me, I was just like, oh, well, I'm never going to dislodge them two. And then even if you did, Shazy would come in and play at centre-back. And, you know, so, you know, unfortunately, we were just 4th or 5th in the pecking order, and that's fine. I would do it again, easily, you know. And I cherish the 9 caps that I had, you know. I got to play 9 times for Ireland, which is unbelievable.
I was thinking, watching at the match yesterday, like the range of emotions obviously football people go through, from like Vinnie Perth's celebration would have been one of these iconic moments as he starts rampaging onto the pitch when the goal goes in, and then obviously the huge disappointment that goes with it half an hour or so later. And thinking of your careers and those moments of just unbelievable elation and the downs, like it's coming up in 10 years now, Keith. It's hard to believe, since the night of Thierry Henry. Was that the lowest point of your career?
Yeah, in a one-off game, like yes, it probably was, but your career is just like, there's so many lows. Like, genuinely, there is. You know, we were talking about the Champions League earlier, and the Messis and the Ronaldos. They get the highs, the constant highs of league titles, and the vast majority of footballers, it's more lows, like injuries, suspensions, you know, falling out of managers, like we just spoke about. But that single game and the manner of it, and how close we were to qualifying. Like, I didn't get my first cap till I was 28, and I would have been playing in a World Cup at the age of 30. So that's how kind of quick that.
Within 18 months, basically, you're making your debut.
And it was just the manner of obviously how it happened, the level that we got to in terms of our performance that night was very pleasing. We had the bit between our teeth after a fairly abject performance at home at Croke Park against them. So all those factors coming into it, and then just devastation, the fact that we weren't going to be playing in a World Cup, and then we just had a decent session after it.
The sense after was that, like, that was a night where almost in the dressing room beforehand there was a decision. Trapattoni has his game plan, but we know the way Irish teams should approach games like this, that we're going to go out, we're going to express ourselves, it's going to be 100 miles an hour right from the start. What's your memory of pre-match and those sort of conversations about how you'd approach the game?
Yeah, I think, like most things, stories probably grow arms and legs as the years go on. Normally down the back of the bus it was the senior players, and although I wasn't experienced and senior in terms of caps, I just naturally, the age I was, I would be around the likes of Shay and Robbie, Dunny, Duffer down the back of the bus, and you know, it wasn't a case of we're going to do this tonight or we're going to do that tonight. I just felt there was a bit of a sense of, let's not have any regrets. And when I look at some of my better performances in an Ireland shirt, I always felt it was when I slightly went away from the team's game plan, and I went and kind of set the tone a little bit and was aggressive and got into the opposition and strayed forward a little bit more than probably I was allowed to. And I just felt that night we got them on the back foot straight away. So there was no great plan from the players' perspective, but I do think we took a step away from what we normally set up, like, which was very pragmatic, obviously.
You were very close to the incident. I think almost all the photos, you're pretty much right there when Thierry Henry handled the ball. It obviously happens in a flash. Are you aware instantly that there's been a grave miscarriage of justice here? Yeah,
well, we all work in TV now, and I when I'm commentating on a game, if you're not sure from what you see, you can tell by players' reactions, can't you, straight away? So if anyone's commentating on that game or looking at that game, you can see straight away there's 4 or 5 Irish shirts, straight hands up, like even at one of them. And I think that's what gives it away. So yeah, I can see it as vividly now as I did on that night, and it wasn't just the one handball, it was the 2. So yeah.
Have you seen him since?
Yeah, he probably doesn't even know who I am. He doesn't even know who I am. So he's yeah, I've seen him on a couple of occasions. Once knocking around Sky. He was in the big boys' room. I was in the little boys' room. So no, I have to be honest. I wouldn't hold the biggest of grudges. Some people have. I don't. I spoke about Phil Parkinson. No, I don't tend to do that. And I felt like we embarrassed ourselves a little bit in the aftermath of it, and appealing to FIFA and, you know, an extra team and all that didn't sit particularly well with me. The £5 million.
We got £5 million though.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't content with that either, as I think you know at the time I came out and I was quite damning of that. So thought we had our heads held high, apart from those couple of little incidents. And then it galvanised us as a group. We kicked on then the next time we qualified for the Euros.
Yeah, does that sort of almost change your feelings on it now that, all right, you didn't get to play at the World Cup finals, but you did get to a major tournament?
No, not really. Not really. It's still obviously a huge regret, and one that you think just got away, because growing up, watching Quinny's teams and the teams just before Quinny got involved, you know, the teams nearly getting there in the 80s, and then you get to 88, like that's what I grew up loving and wanting to be. So the World Cup is there, like the Euros is just a little bit below. It's great to play at a major tournament, obviously, but the World Cup is the holy grail.
What was the flip then? What was the moment of elation if you were to look back on your career?
I think getting to the Euros, even though it wasn't quite the pinnacle in terms of the World Cup, getting and actually qualifying for the Euros, and because of the lows that we had, like I was so patriotic. Everything I did at club level, once I got a bit of sense and stopped messing around and became a little bit more professional, which happened ironically after I left Hull. It started at Hull, but then it genuinely it did. I copped on. I started being a lot more professional and getting a grip of myself.
Why, what were you doing before that? What was the issue?
I wasn't very professional. I was living Quinny's lifestyle, wasn't I? So because I bought into that as well, it was great crack. But no, I just focused on it, and I nearly gave up football at the age of 21, 22. I'd had enough. I fell out of love with it. I wasn't enjoying it. It was a chore on a daily basis.
What kept you going?
I don't know what kept me going. I nearly went to America on a scholarship at the age of 21, 22, and I just had enough of it. And then even at Hull was supposed to be the new chapter. I was at Wolves for 9 years. I was desperately trying to get out of the place for 2 years, and similar to what Niall said in those days, if they had it under a long contract, they did, and they just kept me there as the third, fourth choice centre midfielder, where you'd get a game every now and again, and next of all you wouldn't be in a squad, and my head used to go, and I didn't deal with things very well when I was younger. I was very hot-headed, so a lot of that was my fault, obviously. But then I thought, right, I need to give this a crack at a whip. So I was watching Ireland teams playing and thinking I should be in and around this. Like I'm better than some of these players. So I just thought I need to give it. So everything I did at club level was focused on trying to play for Ireland. And then when I did, I was so emotionally invested in it. I think when we did eventually qualify for the Euros in 2012, it was just that feeling of I've done it. So probably that game over in Estonia, when we won 4-0, we were kind of there, but we kind of couldn't say we were. Huh?
You got the goal.
I got the goal. I broke my nose heading it as well, which was good. But yeah, so that was probably it, the kind of full circle, the disappointment, and then 18 months, 2 years on, you get to a major finals, and it was just kind of so content.
Damien, the moment for me that stands out in your career was a Monday night at Selhurst Park, Liverpool going for the title. Was it 2014? 3-0 down. There's 10 minutes left. Palace produced this miraculous comeback. You leave Steven Gerrard, Luis Suarez in tears. You smash one in from 25 yards.
Yeah, that was a great night, really. It kind of epitomised our season that year, you know. We just... Everything about the club was so great. You know, a couple of years earlier, the club nearly went out of existence, and then we kind of gained promotion out of nowhere with a kind of a ragtag group of kind of players that were thrown together, and we ended up forming a bond and coming together, and we got promoted. And then we went into the Premier League, and the fans weren't expecting anything, so they were just delighted the club was still in existence. So even though we lost games, we ended up staying up. And I think that last night, it was a Monday Night Football, it was a game or two to go or something like that. We were already safe, we had nothing to play for, and then we were 3-0 down, and I just think it was just sums that group up, really, that we just kept going and going and going. We got one, and then we didn't stop, and we sensed a bit of weakness, got a second and a third, and ended up with a 3-3 draw. And obviously that's a great night, unless you're a Liverpool fan in that light. But you know, it was great to be a part of it, and it's definitely one of my highlights.
Yeah, what was the highlight then?
Playoff final has to be, you know,
2013 was it?
2013, yeah. Because like, you know, we lost in the FA Cup final in 2015 or 16, right? And you know, it's heartbreaking, you lose an FA Cup final, but you're still a Premier League player. You know, the Championship is 46 games. It's a slog. It's a tough. You get to the playoff final, and it's one game, winner takes all. You know, and as a player, you know, you get a crack at the big time, or you're hoping you get a crack at the big time, and also, you know, in your contract, it's life-changing. Exactly. You know, your contract doubles straight away. You're incentivized that way, so life is going to be a little bit better. You get a crack at the big time, and all your dreams come true. And all that is in one game of football. In one of the best stadiums in the world.
How do you sleep the night before a game like that?
I always slept great before games, to be honest. I always did. I don't know. Other people are different, but I remember just staying in the moment. You know, it's important to stay focused and not get ahead of yourself and start thinking about all the things I just said. You know, all the things I just said are great. Now sitting on a couch talking about with you guys, but you know, you're standing in a tunnel before a game, and it's obviously the wealthiest game in football, I think they say it is, and it's just staying in the moment. Every second that passes by is just staying focused, doing the right things and being in the right place, and then hopefully at the end you come out in the right end. And Kev Phillips scored the penalty in the cup final. I remember the week of the playoffs, we were practicing penalties. And, like, you know, I was practicing my life out. I was, you know, starting on the halfway line up and everything. I remember Kev Phillips just stood on the side, stood behind the goal, just laughing at everyone. And Kev, you're not practicing. He's like, no, you'll never recreate it. He goes, you never will. So what's the point of me doing this here? It makes absolutely no difference. He goes, doesn't matter to me. He said, you know, if the penalty comes, I'll take it. But it's where you are mentally at that point. All the practice is no good to you. And we got a penalty in extra time. And I just remember I didn't look at it. I looked that way, but obviously Wembley was the two big screens. So I kind of watched the Palace fans were at this end, and I couldn't look like that. And next thing I just saw all the Palace fans jump, and I didn't see the penalty till afterwards, to be honest with you, because I just wanted to get focused quickly and, you know, see the game out. So that was life-changing, really, to be honest with you.
Yeah, because we never talk about that really in terms of the importance of the game. There's the glamour of you're promoted to the Premier League, you'll go to Old Trafford, you'll go to Anfield. You'll live your dreams that way, but like the sheer financial side of it, like you're talking about doubling your wages overnight.
Yeah, on the spot. A lot of players have that in their contracts. If you're not in the Championship, no, the players are getting paid a lot of money, so a lot of them wouldn't. They'd just be kind of on the same. But you know, like I said to you earlier, that we were kind of a ragtag group of strays, really, that were cobbled together by a club that was nearly out of existence. So we all had like. Well, I think we nearly all, I presume a lot of the lads did, to be honest. It was to incentivise you to go and get promoted. So, like, you know, that's a fantastic side of it. And you have a contract, but also, you know, you say you get promoted, you get a crack at the big time. A lot of people don't, because the club decide to go in another direction and just go, you know, I'm going to sign like Fulham did, and they went straight down. Wolves did it, you know. So, you know, you're not guaranteed that, you know. I did remember, like, grabbing Ian Holloway was a manager at the time, and I remember on the pitch afterwards, and I said to him, I said, promise me one thing, and Ian Holloway can't calm him down. I said, just give me one game next year. Just give me the first game of the season. Because I thought, in my head automatically, I was thinking they're going to go and spend X amount of money, this, that, and the other. And I grabbed him and I looked, I said, give me the first game next year. And he said, I promise you, I'll give you the first game. And then the fixtures came out, and it was Spurs at home. Just after they sold Bale, and they signed all those, you know, big hitters that they signed, and I was just like, oh, brilliant. But in fairness, we did really well in that game, and we only lost 1-0 to a late penalty, I think. And obviously we did reasonably well, and I stayed in the team, you know. Yeah,
you must be incredibly proud of that, because you're into your 30s at that stage.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of people might think that opportunity has passed, and you go on over the next 3-4 years, pretty much playing every week.
Yeah, that was, you know, Keith talks about the professionalism, you know, when you get into late 30s. I mean, it's unbelievable things you have to do. You know, you literally have to live like a monk, and I did for 4 or 5 years. I never went out. My diet was perfect. I have my recovery, my yoga, you know, the opposite of.
See, it's not just me.
I can feel Quinny looking at me now, going, "What a waste of time."
No, did you ever do yoga, Niall?
Sorry,
did you ever do yoga?
No, never heard of it. No, word came around that Ryan Giggs was doing it. Yeah. And you're kind of, is he really? He was the first footballer, I think, that was probably going to get into it. And you're kind of going, why is he doing that? And then all of a sudden he's playing at 38, and you're sitting there, and you're kind of, I know now why he was doing that yoga. But interestingly, I think my story when I got into my 30s was my desire levels went up. I wanted it more badly. I'd had 2 cruciates. I was on the scrap heap. I was very nearly signing for a team in Malaysia. Sunderland gave me a chance. I did my second cruciate in the 5th game. For Sunderland, I was the record signing, so the whole thing was going nowhere. And I got back at 31 years of age. I got back to fitness with Sunderland. And those last 5 years were so precious to me. I just loved every minute of it. I became driven. You know, one day, And well, actually I did it a few times, but my duty as a parent was to bring the 2 kids to nursery. And I ended up at the training ground 3 or 4 times, just forgot to drop them off because I was there in the zone. And I used to go into the girl who used to do the food and go, will you mind these till training is over? And then I'd be the car the whole way home. And you're not to tell your mother what happened today, you know. But it wasn't because it was because I was on the way in and going, this is how I'm going to train today. I turned into this lunatic who wanted it badly. Not badly enough to give up the drink, but enough to really want it. And when you have young children, you've had 2 cruciates and your career is flashing before you, you know, you do. I did anyway. I turned into a different person. But I also had the greatest bit of luck. Damien mentioned there, Kevin Phillips walked in the door of Sunderland. Nobody knew who he was. And incredibly, to this day, I don't think any other English person has done it. He won the European Golden Boot playing with Sunderland. Like I think he got 34 goals or something that season in the Premier League. And I got a bit of credit for heading a few balls his way in the whole thing. And it gave us a boost of life. And we were in the playoffs. We lost, actually, so it was a real tough time for us. We lost to Charlton in an unbelievable match. The game itself was 4-4, and we lost out in penalties. But at that point, we should have won the league. We started off terribly. I think we were in 16th place after 8 or 9 games, and we went on this great run. And we finished with 91 points and didn't get promoted, which was quite incredible. But my memory of it was in the dressing room in the aftermath was, you know, we literally got together and went, right, nobody's leaving this club. Nobody's deserting this. We're going to start again on day 1, and we're going to win this league by March. And we did. We came back the next year. He didn't have to sign anyone. The group stayed together. We came back. We wanted it, and we steamrolled it. And our coach at the time, Bobby Saxon, to this day, always gives out to us because we got promoted in March, and we went in the piss till May. And we ended up with 105 points. And we threw away about 7 or 8 points in those last 3 or 4 games. We were going to dues every night of the week. It was crazy stuff. And at one stage, we had a players' night out with the wives, and the wives all had a big fight. And the headline in the Sunderland Echo was Stadium of Fight. And a picture of 2 of the wives like that. Somebody had phones had started to come out by them days before I left. And it was just chaotic. But we finished 105 points. Reading beat us, Kevin Doyle's time and Longy's time when they started at Reading. And we really should have had about 120 points. But it really showed me the value of that bond that you speak about. When you put it up to each other as a group and you've got the right characters that say, yeah, I'm up for it, it brings you so far. And I think that's what Man United miss at this moment. Ferguson instilled that. He had great players, but they were part of this group that would die for each other. Steve Bruce used to tell me lots of stuff about Ferguson and his way and his method. In some ways you can't do it. He was quite tough with them and was bullyish, but what he had was he had a group of players who were afraid to let each other down. And I don't think that's the way Manchester United is now.
How did you get that, though?
Them drinking nights that I told you about there earlier on. We got it at Sunderland. When you have someone sticking the ball in the net like Kevin Phillips was, of course you're feeling great. And the Sunderland people took to it, new stadium, and suddenly we're getting 49,000 people every week. And we became sort of, loved by the people of Sunderland. And, you fed off that and you bought into it. And I remember Darren Bent came some years later when I went back to Sunderland. We brought Darren. He was having a tough time at Spurs. And we brought Darren, and I said to him, you can, as a centre forward, you can play off the energy here. If you turn it on for these people, it'll be better than any club you've been at for the personal support that they will give you. They will lift you and you'll get back in the England team. And he went, I hope so. And he got 24 goals in that first year, became England striker again, and they loved him. Now, agents got involved and they wanted him to move and a big money move, and he ended up moving. But he proved value. That even 10 years after I was saying it was possible, the importance of your self-belief that you can do it for a crowd. You see the Rovers players when they ran to the crowd yesterday. It's that magnet of I suppose, you want that pat in the back from the crowd, but you've done it for them, and it's an energy all of its own that people thrive on. Some people don't need it, but I loved it. I absolutely loved when we did that, and you could look a fan in the eye and go, yeah, we won, or whatever. It's a connection, I think, that is vital. And I saw it in spades yesterday. I thought the Shamrock Rovers had it, and Dundalk had it too. When they got that equaliser, you see the look on the face and the fans, and they come back out as a team. I mean, that for me is the cusp of sport. I think that's where I get goosebumps. When I look at players who've done something like that and they go to the crowd. It's the one that I see most of my career is when Robbie scored against Germany in the last minute, and which was great. I was the first to get to him. But then they all started jumping on me. And right at the end, big Richard Dunn comes and lands in. And I'm walking back to the halfway line. And I go, Mick, I don't think I'm going to be able to play in the next game, you know. But I'm a big, firm believer in the pat on the back. Whether you're a 35-year-old top player or whether you're a kid coming through, in fact, in most walks of life, a pat on the back is energy. If, you know, when the likes of Howard Kendall, who brought me at Man City and who valued me and spoke about me in the press about, we're so pleased with how this man has come, you kind of go in, you go, wow, that's brilliant. And then the opposite of that is you maybe have Mourinho slagging you off like he did the United players. You know, some of them players, how could they give their best when the manager's going, you know, I didn't sign him. You know, so that difference, I know that oh so well. I thrived on that bit where a manager would back you publicly, and particularly if you didn't play a good game and maybe a press guy would ask a bad question or he wasn't very good today. Howard Kendall, I remember one time going, did you see the work he did off the ball? Do you know about football? Did you really watch the game we were watching? And in the end, I think the guy was going to give me 4 out of 10. He gave me an 8, like, you know. But they were the type of things that were important in my day, you know.
That connection that Niall talks about with the squad and the players and the crowd, so much of it, I guess, is down to results and performances. And when things are going well, obviously, the crowd are very much on your side. With Ireland, did you notice a change in that over the years? And like, it's probably nostalgia and looking back to watching you playing, and it felt as though the crowd were always behind the players. Yet by the time that Trapattoni era was coming to an end, continuing through the Martin O'Neill era, it felt like it didn't take much for the crowd to start getting on the players' backs. Did you feel that as a player?
Like with social media now and like your phone now, you're on top of everything, aren't you? But that was only, say, 10 years ago. I finished 5-6 years ago. It didn't feel as much in your face even then. So there was that, and then there was also the fact that I didn't really care, to be perfectly honest. It felt like we were so tight as a group that if somebody wrote something or someone said something that wasn't particularly flattering or positive, so what? So what? We're on a journey. And it just to kind of elaborate a little bit on Niall said, I think going back to those days and when I started, you had that kind of leadership group within a dressing room. And then now it's a different type of dynamic with footballers. You need to find a common goal. We're all motivated differently. Some will be financial, some will be winning a trophy. A Dundalk player might want to get across the water to earn bigger money, or Gannon to get in the Ireland squad, or whoever it is. You need to find a common goal to bring that group on a journey. So with our Ireland team, was it Trapattoni who kind of fed that? No, he just organises, and I think there was an inner steel that drove us all forward, and I didn't particularly care what was written, said, or whatever.
But what about when, say, Glenn Whelan, your midfield partner, who has probably come in for more stick than any other Irish player over the last 10 years. You're obviously aware of that. Even when things were going well, he was really getting it. Like, would you talk about that as a group? Like, would you be getting onto him saying ignore it, or did you just all ignore it?
Properly speaking about it as such, but if anything, again, it galvanises probably more without making a huge issue of it, or if we were talking about it in 2s and 3s, it was never certainly something we sat down in a meeting and said, right, we need to do this, or we need to protect Glenn, or we need to boycott the media or anything like that. But yeah, there was always that kind of underlying criticism that he was getting, some of it unfairly. It's just part and parcel of football, isn't it? You've got to kind of roll with it. Niall's right. I don't know a footballer that doesn't enjoy getting a pat on the back, doesn't like being the manager's favourite player or the one he always goes to. I've certainly played my best football with managers that gave me a little bit more. But you don't always get that, obviously.
Yeah, and Nathan, it wasn't always that way. Jack Charlton's start was bad, and we were getting a lot of stick until we played Brazil in a friendly and Liam Brady scored a goal. That was the change. But I can distinctly remember one of my first caps, the ball went out of play at Lansdowne, and the lad throwing it back to me went, "Quinn, I'd keep a beach ball away from you in a telephone box." And it stayed in my head. I was actually going, oh, Jesus. And I was taking the throw in. And it was the real old sort of football fan in those days used to attend the Ireland matches, and then we got a bit of success and the corporates came in and got all the seats. So I was there for that change. But it was a lovely transition from them nearly giving up on us. And remember, the troubles were still obviously at their worst, and an Englishman had come to manage us. So there was a lot of problems at those times. But the transition then to have Jack become the hero on the team to go on and do what it did, and the Euros in '88 and '90 and '94, it was a magic time. And I underplay it. I hear you just talking about my Arsenal days, but Keith has said right, and Damien said as well, you're playing to be called up for the Irish team, and you go with an injury, you tell the physio you're fine. And I remember coming back from one international, and we were playing, we'd like come back on the Thursday and we're playing again on the Saturday, and Peter Reid's team talk, I was at Man City at the time, was right, we have a simple plan today. We're going to put a green shirt under Niall Quinn, and he's going to run around twice as much as he does when he normally plays for us. And they used to take the mick out of me because my whole thing was about get over Ireland. It was that lovely transition where they really liked us. The team were patting, the fans were patting us on the back all the time. Taxi drivers, free, you don't have to charge you. Are you sure? Oh, great, okay. And wouldn't do it now, but it was a lovely time. And when I look back at my favourite moments, it was that whole period, and Mick then carrying it on and qualifying for 2002. I was spent force by then, but to get the tail end of it was magic, you know.
Jack's obviously been struggling with his health in recent times. Do you have an opportunity to talk to him still?
Yeah, he came over. We had a bit of a reunion there last year, and he came over, and it was brilliant to see him. You know, his family brought him, and a good about 16 or about 23 of about 35 players who played competitively for him. We had a kind of competitive players who played with Jack reunion, and about 23 got there, and it was great to see them. Chris Houghton, manager of Brighton at the time, he came over, took a day off to come and meet everybody, and it was just lovely having him, you know. But he was still great. He'd go, Noel, which is me, right? You were hopeless, you know. So you were hopeless until you started listening, you know. He said, and then he turned around to her. He was hopeless, you know. And they're kind of going, Jack, Jesus, like, come on, we're all sort of back together, like, you know. And the waiter would be coming over with drinks, and he goes, you know, he was hopeless, you know. Like, so he still had that spark in him, like, you know. And I can remember one day we were doing a session, and he wanted someone. He had the 11 that were playing, and he wanted someone to knock a few balls in for them for free kicks. And I looked around and went, here, I'll do it. And he went, no. Get back there. And I was really offended. Oh, I can do it. And they were all starting laughing. All the players would laugh at you, like, you know. And I went, let me, I'll show you. I'll prove it to you. And I went and took this free kick, and I slipped on my arse. Right? and you know, them moments, but it's the making of you too, because the squad was so good, and they'd laugh about it. And then you come around and say, I'm going to show him. And the joke would be then, if we get any free kicks, Noel will take them, you know. And I go, it's Niall, like, you know, right? But anyway, they were just great times. He's very special to see him again. And you know, people talk about his style of football, and I'd say two things here. One, he was the first man who recognised that the Irish midfield were always getting beaten up by a number 10 or somebody on the other team who was destroying us. So what he didn't change the front two, but as soon as we lost possession, one of us had to go in and make a 5. 7 years later, Carlos Queiroz brings it to the Premier League with Alex Ferguson, and they win a load more titles, and the whole of football does it now. Our problem was when we had the ball. That's when Jack probably was agricultural, in as much that, I don't care, Liam Brady, how good you are, knock it to that corner flag. So somewhere in there was a great strategist, and he doesn't get the credit for that because of the long. Keith's looking at me now. He wants to beat me up.
No, not at all. Jesus,
and so
Did you ever talk to him about where that came from, where that attitude when you had the ball, considering he came from a Leeds team that certainly John Giles would say very much tried. I know they could do the rough stuff as well, but very much tried to play football. Why, as a manager, he didn't appreciate that side of it?
He just, even then, he hated the fact that we might lose the ball and be exposed. That was his big thing.
Wasn't it?
It was low risk. And he used to tell Mick and Kevin at the time at the start, you know, get out and win it. I don't care if you lose, but if we keep going and press, and we push them in, and we could be more physical then, and the players could have more of a presence. And he always asked the goalkeeper to be 25 yards out, ready if the ball goes over the top, because of his players pushed up, that he would get it. And it was always the players, get it, turn them. That's all he ever said was turn them. When we turn them, we're in charge. And then if we can recycle the ball and do stuff and get it in the box, that's what we did. And he obviously, it was tough to start with, you know. I'll never forget the day he took Liam Brady off after 25 minutes. and it was his last game ever. Andy Townsend went on to replace him, and the whole stadium knew it was the end for Liam. And he'd shouted at Liam. I was on the bench, and he'd shouted at Liam for the first 20. Liam had done nothing wrong, but it was obviously, I'm going doing this thing now. And I remember Bruce Shields went to the Late Late Show looking for an appeal for people to write in and get him back in the team. That's how big an issue it was. So Jack wasn't hugely popular, but it was just all the driven. And it was funny. We were at the Aviva last night with Lansdowne Road in my day, and I was telling the lads with me the story that we trained one evening before a match. And it was a summer's evening. There was no floodlights then. That'll tell you, right? We had no floodlights in the Aviva. And the grass, we were playing Spain, and the grass was about that height, you know, and we were going to his sister, and Jack was delighted. And up the other end, a fella in the tractor started cutting the grass. And Jack starts running up the field. And he dragged him down off the tractor, right, so he couldn't cut the grass. And the next day, you had about 10 yards at one end, cut beautifully, and the rest of it like a cabbage patch. And famously, Butch Regueno commented afterwards about the condition of the pitch. He said it was perfect for rugby. He said, right? So, but you know, that was
the success was obviously incredible with European Championship, 2 World Cups. Does any part of you think if you had played a better style of football with the players you had, you could have actually achieved more?
I was thinking of that when you spoke to Keith about to just take it that night against France and do it different to what Trapattoni said. We actually did that in the England game at Wembley. When we should have won the game, we drew 1-1, but we played them off the pitch. And I can remember Jack at half-time going, well, you're doing fine without me. Carry on doing what you're doing, like, you know. And he was kind of taking the mick a little bit, but we just found a confidence that night, and we rattled them, and we just didn't put it away. We'd raid a great chance in the last minute, I think, if you remember. But it was just brilliant that night to know that the players were going to play a different type of game, and we kept it. We outpassed England, and it did show me that was the one night when we all actually would say, you know, we should do that more often, you know, as a group in 3s or 4s. Oh, like, we can do this, you know. But then that team just got a bit old then not long after that. 94 was kind of the final hooray. And I remember I was suspended for the game in Anfield, the playoff game, Jack's last game. And I can remember that Dutch team, you know, just tore us apart, and we were old. You know, the team had to change.
Keith, just before we wrap up, we're obviously here in Dundalk where your boss had such success, Stephen Kenny, over recent years. He did okay. How have you found working with him?
I've loved it. Came out of the blue. The offer to come in and work with him. As you know, I was involved with the underage teams a few seasons ago with the 16s, 17s and 18s. Enjoyed working with them. Got together in January, and it's been a brilliant few months working together with talented group of players, obviously one of which has gone up to the seniors in the last month and done very, very well, and playing for Brighton as well, Aaron Connolly, and there's a few more in this squad. So no, it's something that I'm very passionate about, and yeah, I'm thoroughly enjoying it.
Are you worried that we're all getting a bit too excited about what the future holds for Irish football?
No, I think when I go back to Niall's team and that team in 88 and 90 and 94, like, I worshipped those players. I'm sure Damien was the same. Like, I remember running around the park screaming I was Byrne slaving. Like, Byrne slaving. Like, just because he scored a goal, and whatever goal it was against Albania or whoever it was, like, that was the regard that I held Irish international players in.
Can I tell you a quick Byrne slaving story?
I had a feeling there was going to be a Byrne slaving story.
Oh, jeez, you're after opening a treasure trove of stories up there. So one of our players famously went missing from the dressing room just before the game. It was a qualifier against Malta, I think, at home, and Paul didn't attend the game. He got off the bus and went back out to the hotel. And Jack had to reshuffle things, and Byrne, who wasn't named in the 16, was brought in as sub. He had no boots with him, and Noel King gave him his boots. Noel was the coach at the time, and he sat on the bench, said nothing to nobody, and with 10 minutes to go, he got called off the bench, took his tracksuit off, and he had 22 signatures on his jersey that he'd got signed for a raffle in So an Ireland International World Cup qualifier, played with the coach's boots and a jersey signed with us. It was just brilliant time to play football. I interrupted you there, sorry.
No, I think you're good. And we have been here tonight with Virgin Media Sport. We've over 400 UEFA Champions League, Europa League and Nations League games live this season. It's available to all Virgin Media TV customers who can also download the TV Anywhere app and stream all the action whenever and wherever they like. Thank you all very much for coming out tonight. I know you're all a little bit disappointed. So it's been brilliant to be here in Dundalk. Please give it up for Damien Delaney, for Keith Andrews, and for Niall Quinn.
Thank you.
Thanks to everybody here at the venue at the Hotel Imperial. To you, our wonderful audience. Good night. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Team 33 Gold on OTB Sports Radio.